Hi, I'm Adrian and I'm a designer.
And my name is Florine and I'm a developer. Today we're going to talk about iconic meats. Mostly.
Meat. So let's first talk about what we actually mean by iconic meats.
Hamburgers!
Oh, hamburgers. So we're talking about icons today.
Yeah.
So let's start off with an iconic drink. I've been told I would totally hate this. This is Ledger's tonic. It's tonic water with licorice. I like tonic water. Licorice,
Let's try.
not so much. So let's find out. I'm going to take very, very little of this. That should do. Cheers.
Cheers.
Whoa. It smells like a candy shop.
Not too bad, I like it.
It starts off not too bad, but then it turns horrible, horrible, horrible.
Ah.
Just no. No.
You don't know what's good.
Well, there's no accounting for taste,
Okay,
I guess.
back to meat.
Back to back to meat. Let's talk about.
Because we haven't talked about the kebab icon, right? The shish kebab.
No, we haven't talked about the shish kebab icon yet, but we probably will. Because there's a lot of icons on the web, and some of these are fairly well known. For instance, the hamburger one has caused quite a stir.
I think it has caused quite a stir, but you say it's quite well known. It's quite well known in designers and developers, because I still wonder why we have to add the letters MENU next to
because and
3 lines.
The word menu still communicates better than 3 lines.
It does.
So if you can use a label, use a label.
Yeah.
But icons are very prevalent in the web design community and in the
on the web, yeah.
On the web, yeah.
Well, not only on the web, in software, I think. Because it's since I can remember in Windows 3.1 there were icons.
Yeah, there are icons everywhere, and designers are very used to icons, and very cryptic icons at that, when they use, for instance, Creative Suite, which is basically a drawer full of icons, and then add to that massive menus that you can understand.
But at least they are text.
The menus are text, yeah. They are still fairly cryptical. I mean, you can make something with text complicated if you want. I mean, you don't need an icon to do that, but you can do plain old text.
No, you don't. But why do you think icons are mostly useless decoration?
I think because they are usually made as decoration. I think that
But are they?
I don't think they are intentionally so, but people don't often ask themselves, does this need an icon? They think, you know what would look good on this? An icon.
Or we have not enough space for text, so just let's add an icon. Use an icon instead.
Sometimes that also happens, but this is a very problematic thing, actually, and this is also where the hamburger, for instance, ran into trouble, because icons are all learned behaviors. I mean, there are no icons that are universally understandable by people who are, just born, for instance. You have to learn what icons mean, and that's true for pretty much every case.
Even like a toilet sign, like male, female?
I think that's learned behavior.
Okay.
I mean, you could also just look at, for instance, a male or female sign as a person. A toilet for a person, not a person, or a toilet
not a dog.
For a dog, for instance. Yeah. I mean, of course, it seems very implicit and it seems very logical, but it is learned behavior.
Okay.
And actually, the reason we want to talk about learned behavior is because recently the Dutch, what is it? The
Dutch Committee for Pharmacy
Pharmacy Apothecaries
in the Netherlands.
They had actually a very good idea, because they wanted to make medication clearer for people with low reading skills.
Yes, and less educational background.
Because many pharmaceutical texts, they include difficult words, and so they wanted to make it easier for people to understand what medicine does, what it's for,
and how you should
use it,
how you should take it,
that kind of thing. The problem is their execution. They thought, you know what we're going to do? Text is problematic for these people, so we're going to make icons.
Let's have a look at
and
some
here's
of
what
these.
happened, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the first one.
I think it's about performance-enhancing drugs, because you will reach, with this pill, you will reach the finish line much faster.
I can make that dirty so quickly. I mean, that's too easy. But what they actually mean is that you have to, like if you're, for instance, on antibiotics, you have to finish the entire course of it. So you have to take all of them.
Yeah.
And
let's look at another one.
I'm not really sure that this icon will convey that. If you just see the icon, I don't think you know what that means unless you read the text next to it. And if you read the text next to it, you don't need the icon. So I'm not really seeing the benefit here.
No.
And this is also a problem with the next one.
This is, for instance, this is probably for people that like Edward Munch paintings.
Or turn you into a Macaulay Culkin. I really can't tell what this does. Apparently this is for medications that lessen fears or anxiety. I mean, I see a person who sort of looks scared, but I don't see how it would convey that it lessens it. I don't see it. And so here it's very apparent that you need the text in order to understand the icon.
So the icon in itself is just, again, decoration.
It's, again, decoration. So for me, I'm thinking, why didn't they just get together with a lot of pharmaceutical companies and talk to them and ask them to write simpler, more understandable, a more legible text of how to use and what their medication and what they do and so forth.
And I think, well, there are some that are more clear than others.
The only one that I really think that works well is this one.
The bum icon.
The bum icon. This works perfectly. I mean, the person who designed this, especially like the arrow. Although I'm a designer, so I probably would have put it at an angle. But still, this conveys the message perfectly. This is a good one. But they have, I think there's about 15, 20 of them all together. And they're all varying degrees of cryptic.
So, but can icons be great?
I think icons can be great, and there are some good examples of very old icons. For instance, the save icon is ancient.
Yeah.
But
whenever I talk about the save icon, I think about this. There is this little cartoon where a boy comes to a father shows his boy like a floppy disk, and then the boy goes like, "Wow, you made a 3D model of the save icon."
Yeah, you 3D printed that.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. And also, I mean, that joke only works outside of Norway, because apparently in Norway the doctors there still use floppy disks to save their
patient information. Yeah.
So that's an interesting side.
There's actually it's a pretty interesting article. We have linked it in the description. So
exactly. But there are definitely icons that convey meaning very well, but they usually have a few traits that make them good, and one of them is they have to be well known. They have to be almost universal, so people can read the image quicker than they can read the text.
And also they have to have somewhat also take into account cultural differences as well.
Yeah, that is definitely also an issue, and usually icons are not very detailed, and there's also with well-known icons there's less a degree of the roll your own, you know, where people try to put an original or their own spin on a certain icon. Mm-hmm. The less that happens, the more settled in an icon actually is, and the more legible it will be. And that's actually what caused a big problem with the mystery meat icons, because we as designers or front-end developers or people who are active on the web, they think, you know, that's a very universal icon. Everyone knows that. Yeah. And then they tested that, and it didn't really work that well. And then they added the word menu to it, and it worked much better. And then they removed the icon, and it worked better still. So then you're back to, when is an icon really, when does it have a purpose, and when is it just decoration? And I like decoration. I mean, I like things to look nice. But if you pretend like it's a communication tool that serves no other purpose than to look nice, it's a bit iffy.
Yes, but still, I think icons can help in when you let's take an app for like Twitter or Facebook, something like that. And of course, the first time I click on an icon, I don't know what it does. But I think
it's learned behavior. You have to click on it and it does that. And next time you will know, the second one from the left is this.
And that works very well for applications you use every day or every hour. You use a lot because you know what the different icons do. But it doesn't work that well for something you use, like say once a year. Right? If your tax entry form would consist of all icons, you would go crazy because that's an action you do once a year.
And it's very complex, so it has many different layers. That's true. Actually, we did a quick test with that with the new Medium app, where when they did the rebrand, they also redid the app on iOS, and I showed you. And they have no labels, so the icons in the bottom row, they have no, or they had, I don't know if they have it now, they had no labels for the icons. And I showed them to you and asked you, what do they do? And you got all of them correctly, but I think you're also quite savvy in this.
Yes, and I use similar apps that have similar features.
Yeah, and that's actually what I was talking about roll your own. So if you use icons that sort of follow a convention, so there is, for instance, a warning sign like the triangle with an exclamation mark in it is one that is very broadly used, or a square with a check mark for something is okay or something is done. These are very universal signs, but they all look alike. Like every site that uses an icon like that, they're not vastly different. They're all pretty much the same.
No, they will have maybe, they will vary in style, like have round corners, not round corners, have stuff like that.
But generally, they have different widths and different sizes, blah, blah, but globally they are the same. And this is a problem with the mystery meat icons, like the menu icons. We actually have an example from this from Luke Roblowski. He tweeted this, so let's have a look there. Luke Roblowski, he tweeted this in April of this year, and he shows the hamburger menu icon on the left.
But apparently that wasn't enough.
That was not good enough. Someone thought it a good idea to introduce the kebab menu. So you made an obscure menu icon even more obscure by changing it slightly. And I think this is something from Google. Actually, this looks like Apple Maps, looking at the icon. But Google Maps also uses this.
This is an obvious mistake, making an icon even more obscure. What do you as a designer, what do you think are other common mistakes that we see in icon design or icon usage for that matter?
I think obscurity is by far the biggest problem with many icons. We tend to not look at icons as closely as we look at text. So we're like, yeah, this looks fun, or this looks slick, or it's like it's an adjective that you would add to it that would basically imply it's beautifying. So we just make something and we don't look at its communicative value that closely. Especially
if we're going to add text to it anyway.
Especially that, then we tend to, it doesn't matter if the icon is very obscure, because we can just add a label later. And actually ties back in with the menu in the Medium app, where they removed the labels entirely. And I can imagine this happening, that the first version had an icon and a label, and then over time they thought, people know this app, they don't need a label anymore, and they just remove that.
But that makes onboarding much harder.
It makes it much harder, and especially if you are a platform that grows, so it has to get new users every day, then you're not doing them any favors by removing the thing that helps them navigate your app.
Then again, you might learn them pretty quickly, but that's
I hope they have some metrics on that. Yeah, I hope they do some analytics on that.
Yeah. So, what are so having two obscure icons or having them without text are some issues. What other issues?
Well, designer-specific issues, I think, is that we make an icon for a certain size and then just it's vector, so we just scale it down. And this is mostly a problem if a an icon has fine details or very narrow spacings between certain objects. So at a certain size, if you make it small enough, it'll just mush into nothingness.
Okay. So an icon, so like a guideline for an icon should be not too detailed. It should be really simple, like a hamburger icon, or like or more like
a fine line,
like a male-female icon, or
there's a fine line. You have to look at it as a communication tool. So you have to look at it, when does it stop communicating? And I think someone came up with the hamburger icon in like 1981.
It's in a Xerox UI.
It's in it's really, really old. And what they thought it was is a list, like a menu. If you expand something, it's basically a list of items. And that's where the 3 lines came from. But looking at just 3 lines, you can't really tell that it's a list. It looks like
3 lines.
3 lines. So that's a case where it might be oversimplified.
Okay.
So I think there's a fine line, and this is actually why icon design is very, very hard. It's a very unique skill to actually be able to translate sometimes very abstract ideas into an image. That's a really difficult job, and that's something that I personally struggle with to make them communicate right. Yeah. I can make something pretty, but that's usually not the issue. Part. That's the easy part, and so that's one thing. And a lot of icons, this sort of ties in with the obscurity part, is where they try to be too original, or let's say that their style gets in the way of how they communicate.
Is that the case with the previous example from the apothecaries? Is that something that happened there? That they try to be, or is that more they try to abstract too much?
I think that they try to abstract too much, and they try to abstract in an area where it's very hard to abstract.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of information to be conveyed, and to try to mash that into one tiny image is incredibly difficult. And I mean, given the difficulty of their task, they didn't do a bad job. I just don't think that
their solution is the right.
Yeah. I don't think icons are the right way to do this.
Yeah, agreed. That's also like, how accessible are icons? I'm not an accessibility expert, but I don't think icons, well, at least if they're used wrong, in the wrong way, or placed, also technically placed in the wrong way, then they're absolutely shit for accessibility.
They are shit for accessibility, and I mean, this is dying out, but back when we used to make icon fonts, for instance, and people who, for instance, have dyslexic, they would replace fonts so they could easily read the text on websites. They would also replace icon fonts, which meant that they made no sense. And this is also a problem with screen readers, where screen readers would encounter a weird character, and then I don't know what they did.
I'm not sure either. So
we have to ask Leonie Watson. She would probably know what that does.
Yeah. There is also the fact that you would always have to take extra measure to make, when you're just placing an icon with no text, then you're going to have to put extra measures in making that accessible to be able to, for instance, for screen readers and other assistive technology. Yeah.
And then you're going to have to ask yourself really, really hard, is it worth it? Is it worth this extra effort to communicate less or less well by using an icon instead of just using a text label? And I understand sometimes there are space constraints, but it also works the other way around. For instance, I have seen that, especially in like native apps, where they have a bottom row with icons, which is basically the menu. And then they added labels and icons, but to make the icons big enough so you can actually see what they represent, they had to shrink the text down so tiny that is, I mean, on retina screens, it's barely legible. And then you're asking yourself, okay, this is another issue where you pick style over substance, because these icons don't communicate enough, otherwise you wouldn't have needed the labels. And if that's the case, then why do you need the icons? Then you just need the label. Yeah.
We've been bashing icons a bit here. Before we wrap up, I just want to, are there good uses? Are there good uses for icons? Can icons be a good thing?
There absolutely are good uses for icons. I mean, there's many icons that we see on the street every day that can imply these are pictograms and stuff that can guide us through streets and traffic and software, and there are many good examples. Bathrooms, for instance.
Yeah.
But you have to keep in mind that it's always learned behavior, and if you deviate from, let's call them the universal icons that most people, at least we're going to narrow this down to the Western world, so we don't have that many cultural differences, we'll understand. If you deviate from that, you will eventually run into problems, especially if you don't properly label them.
Yeah. I think there is one case where you can practically use any icon, and that's when you have lists of things where you just need them as a differentiator.
Yeah. So you can differentiate if you have a list of let's say different downloads, for instance, or different set of links that.
Then you can just make the items identifiable, or
exactly.
Scannable. So for that.
Yeah, because you can read probably the icon quicker than anything else. So. There it does help. But even there, you're going to need a very, very consistent style to make that work.
Yeah. Or just add text and explain what it is. So,
just add what it is. That usually best tactic.
Yeah. So this is, I guess this is it. We're our episode about icons. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you all for liking, commenting, and subscribing. And we'd like to thank DigiPaint and Asphalt Photo who are sponsoring this episode. Thank you.